Dylan Gabriel, still the favorite, Joe. Everybody expects him to go out to Oregon and do a Bo Nix part due, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, or just build upon what he did at Oklahoma last year, to be honest. Carson Beck still right there with him in some spots, just behind him in other spots, anywhere from 7 to 8 to 1. Jackson Dart is the big movement that we talked about over the last couple of weeks, from 20 to 1 at BetMGM all the way down to 12 to 1. You can still find him around 14 in some spots. There is still, for some reason, a bunch of money on Shedeur Sanders. Here's the problem with that. Shedeur Sanders may end up being a first-round draft pick, right? He may end up having a decent season at Colorado. Colorado, in and of itself, is not going to be a good team this year, though. If Colorado goes 5-7, Shedeur Sanders isn't winning the Heisman, yet he's 11% of the handle at BetMGM, second most behind Gabriel, second largest liability at BetMGM, behind Travis Hunter. Somebody must have laid a huge pile of money on that one, and just ahead of Dylan Gabriel. The Shedeur Sanders thing just doesn't make any sense for me.
None. Doesn't. I guess it's just because, look, Shedeur Sanders, he was in the conversation for a short bit last year, very early on in the season, and it's just something to root for. And remember, legalization in Colorado. So there's a ton of books. There's a ton of books in Colorado. I know that over the years, there have been a lot of pros that have moved to Colorado because of the options that you have, and you have a chance at making a living there if you do this on the professional level. But no, it doesn't make sense to me. And look, like the last couple years, you could argue against, oh, well, do you need to be in the playoff? Because look at how it's gone, right? Caleb Jaden Daniels. But now with the expansion, I think we're going back to that direction. Like, can you just take a guy that puts up numbers, but you can't be top 12 in the country? I don't think you can.
I don't think so.
You got to be in the playoff picture. I think we're going to go back to that, where that's one of the things that is an absolute must. You've got to be in the playoffs, and most likely quarterback last 24 years, man. I know we have our outliers. Devontae Smith in 2020. Remember that year. Remember what happened with the quarterbacks and all the injuries and the disappointments that we saw. And with all the movement that we're seeing, quarterbacks going in the position that best works for them, where they're going to be starting right away, or at least have a year. Like the outliers, the 4 times in the last 24 years, it was not a quarterback. 3 times it was a Bama player, right? Do we have that school where it's just like they get so much more respect than anybody else? I don't know that we do, because it's not like we're getting Georgia guys winning it every year. And, it's usually a running back. So maybe that's the case. But, man, it's been about a decade since a running back won this award. And with the number of quarterback and the high-level quarterback play that we're seeing, I don't think there's any going back. It's going to be like the NFL MVP. It's going to be all QB.
There's too many quarterbacks to jump. And when you talk about you got to be a playoff quarterback, you can't tell me that there are, I'm just checking it out right now, 9 guys right now that you can find at less than 20 to 1 at every single book that I see listed. And it starts with Gabriel and Beck at the top of that board. Then you go to Quinn Ewers, right? Will Howard, Ohio State. All 4 of those teams are expected to be in the playoff. If they aren't in the playoff, to your point, none of those guys wins. So let's go to the second half of that top tier group then. Let's go to Nico Iamaleava. I think I'm saying that right. Nico in Tennessee. Probably got to make the playoff, because if they don't make the playoff, he hasn't played well enough, to be in the conversation. Jalen Milroe. If Alabama doesn't make the playoff, that probably means Milroe isn't playing well enough. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss. Cam Ward, Miami. All of those guys, that second group of guys, and I would probably lump Will Howard in with that second group of guys as well, just based on the prices at all the books. They've got to get to the playoff. I totally agree with you in regards to that. Oregon's going to be in the Big Ten championship game, most likely. And Dylan Gabriel is going to be a huge part of that. He's going to be the face of the program this year. So, I just can't do it at the prices that are listed, anywhere between like $5.50 and $7 to 1.
And we just saw it with the quarterback stepping into that system, having a high level of success. And now you're going to be in the real limelight. Like the Pac-12 is nice. It was the best year they had in a long time last season, but now you're entering the Big Ten. And if they end up winning, if they're kind of like the team to chase along with Ohio State all season long, like that's going to bring it to another level. And you had Knicks in the Pac-12 last year. Don't forget the conversation about quarterbacks. Top three vote getters in a year with Marvin Harrison Jr., right?
Yeah.
Like this is the guy. He's expected to maybe be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. Clearly the best receiver all season long. I mean, Neighbors was close, but that's how good Harrison is. And he was fourth in voting. So I think that's where we're going to continue. But yeah, with the system and the experience that we see out of Gabriel and the high level play we've already gotten, he should be the favorite. I like it. You got to take strong stances. Like we are picking nits a little bit. Like, is Carson Beck going to get all the credit for the Georgia success? I don't know because they're just so
No.
strong everywhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet on him at 8-1. There's it's a softer schedule. I think there will be some struggles for Texas. So I like yours, and I do expect him to play all year. Like the projection was that he wasn't going to be playing all year, right? Because we know who's coming. You got a Manning, but I'm not for him to be the Heisman. Walking in, he'd have to dominate the SEC. And you look at the other SEC quarterbacks, I just can't get there. Not as a third favorite at 10-1. SEC quarterback that I do like though is Jackson Dart.
There we are.
Third year in the system with Lane Kiffin. Already put up ridiculous numbers. He's got the name value now at 14-1. That's kind of, I guess he's priced as a second tier guy. Same odds as Milroe, just about the same odds as Will Howard and Nico, as you mentioned there, Cam Ward. I mean, of that group, it's no doubt I would take Jackson Dart.
I mean, you look everywhere across the board, including our guy Phil Steele. They've got Jackson Dart ranked as the second best, and even in a couple places I've seen him ranked ahead of Beck, but the second best quarterback in the SEC. That's ahead of Ewers. Ewers is good, and he could be very good. But Jackson Dart is, again, as good, if not better than Ewers. And to your point, same system, a lot of the same players. I really do. I've been on Jackson Dart for a while now. That number, like I said, has come down. One other longer shot that I will throw out there in the SEC before I get to a couple of ACC names, believe it or not. Brady Cook at Missouri, because I brought Missouri up yesterday when we were talking about SEC teams and anybody else who might be able to challenge Georgia and looking for longer numbers for the SEC title. I found Missouri at better than 20-1. If Missouri does live up to that expectation and you're giving me their quarterback at an even longer number of 35-1, Missouri is, right on the cusp of being one of those, depending on how many teams from the SEC get into the playoff, right on the cusp of being a playoff team. And if they take the next step, as they've taken the last couple of years, maybe being in the SEC title game, that's going to put Brady Cook on a lot of people's radar, especially early on, given the schedule. 35-1, probably the best number you're going to get. And if you're looking for something longer, I would suggest him in the SEC.
You're all in on them. I mean, hey, it makes sense, right? These things do correlate. If you think a team is going to have a puncher's chance at a conference, the best conference, well, then you better believe that quarterback is going to be in the mix for the Heisman. Yep. 100%. All right, I'm going to go down the board a little bit. Want to get your thoughts. I'll knock the long shot out of the way. You know this is coming. I like them to win the Big 12. I mean, Cam Rising at 40-1. If he puts together a full season, they go to the Big 12, they take that, he's going to be in that conversation. Like, there's no way it's going to be 40-1. If they're in the playoff mix, right, and he's healthy all year, and quarterback injuries are quarterback injuries, but like it's been multiple years. That's why it's a concern with Cam Rising. And we were hearing he's close, and we weren't seeing him on the football field for a long, long time.
I really like it because while I don't think it'll end up happening, I think there's a better chance of it happening. I think there's a lot of value on a 40-1 ticket because we're talking about an experienced quarterback, a guy who's in a familiar system with a lot of familiar pieces around him. He knows the coach. There's just comfort, right? There's everybody knows everybody else, and they are the favorite in the Big 12 or one of a couple of favorites in the Big 12. So I do kind of like that one. I don't think he'll end up winning it. I think other pieces at Utah will end up getting a lot of the credit, and the health aspect of it always has me concerned. But you bring up a good point. If he does stay healthy all year, he's the primary reason Utah wins the Big 12 if they do.
I'll take Cam Rising at 40-1 over Shedeur Sanders at 35-1.
Oh,
100
absolutely.
times out of
All day.
100.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt about it. All right, the other one's kind of mid-range, a little bit more value plays. Want to get your thoughts. I'm starting to wonder, is LSU just QBU now at this point with the number of Heisman winners that we've seen? And we know they're going to bring in the talent year after year. Nussmeier was awesome in the bowl game last year, if that means
Yeah.
anything for you. Threw for almost 400 yards, so he's going to step in a good situation. Not a ton of starters returning for LSU, but we know Brian Kelly's going to get guys in. They just churn, especially in the SEC. So I was considering Nussmeier at 22-1, and the other one in that same range, I was just talking about the Big 12. What if it's Kansas State?
Yeah.
Avery Johnson was impressive as a freshman. Now he's going into his sophomore year, taking over for Will Howard. He's sitting there at 25-1. Again, the concern, not many offensive starters back, but he knows the system. They can put up points. If they end up taking the Big 12, you would think that Avery Johnson's in that conversation.